Growing up in the 80s, I was not the biggest fan of music, except for movie soundtracks. Back to the Future,
Use the Force, Luke.
Star Wars, Batman, and of course, probably the biggest hit at the time, Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. There was a restaurant in my hometown with an old-style jukebox with Ghostbusters on it. And every time my family went out to eat there, I was feeding quarters into that thing, just replaying Ghostbusters again and again, all night long. My cousin and I must have been known as local terrors to everyone else who ate there.
Something strange.
Recently, I picked up the book, A Convenient Parallel Dimension by James Green Jr., all about the behind-the-scenes making of the Ghostbusters movie throughout the years. And while I already knew quite a bit as a fan, I didn't realize just how much drama actually surrounded the birth of that signature song.
You like Huey Lewis and the News?
So today, we're going to be looking at 80s new wave band Huey Lewis and the News.
They say the hard rock and roll is forbidden.
Its connection to the creation of Ray Parker Jr.'s smash hit,
Look it's not for sale.
and the behind-the-scenes spectacle that happened in the years after it took off. I'm Rick, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So who were Huey Lewis and the News? Well, if you're a soundtrack guy like me, you definitely know their stuff, even if you don't realize it.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
One of their biggest collaborations with Hollywood happened with 1985's Back to the Future.
From the big smash hit movie.
Not only did they pen the title track, Back in Time,
I'm late for school.
but also the power ballad, The Power of Love.
It's a curious thing.
Their music really captured the zeitgeist of the 80s,
I like so you have the power to put your finger on the pulse of society.
and it found its way into a lot of movies.
Still that same old backbeat rhythm. Walking on a thin line.
You like Huey Lewis and the News?
Also of particular note is the band's inclusion in Bret Easton Ellis's 1991 novel and subsequent 2000 movie, American Psycho.
But when Sports came out in '83, I think they really came into their own, commercially and artistically.
Not only is there a whole chapter in the book just about the band,
In '87, Huey released this, Four, their most accomplished album.
but in the movie, Patrick Bateman gives an infamous monologue reviewing the band, accompanied by their hit song, Hip to Be Square,
It's also a personal statement about the band itself.
right before killing Jared Leto. Which is a scene that keeps getting better and better to rewatch the more Jared Leto keeps ruining movies. But there is actually a bit of confusion surrounding Hip to Be Square and its inclusion in American Psycho. Originally, the song was featured on the movie's soundtrack. However, it was later pulled from stores, and the publisher had to reissue the record without it. Some reports chalk this up to a rights issue not being secured in time. But, according to Lewis and Rolling Stone, the actual reason was way different. They said they want to do a soundtrack album. I said, really? What would it look like? He goes, Hip to Be Square, a Phil Collins tune, and a bunch of source music. I said, well, that's not right, is it? Our fans have to buy this record for one song? Can we politely decline? Although it's weird because this happened after Back to the Future, and that album has 2 of their songs on it. So I guessing 2 songs is okay. But then, in what appears to be a publicity stunt, someone leaked the story the day before American Psycho came out that Huey Lewis had objected to the violent content in the movie. Again, Lewis denies this, saying he had no issue with the movie or its violence. We knew it was violent and all that, but who cares? It's art. We're artists. No problem. However, the false marketing story ended up making Lewis personally boycott the movie anyway. But then, Bret Easton Ellis came out to say that he regretted associating Huey Lewis with the movie, saying, "I ended up feeling bad for Bateman's loving attention towards the band. I didn't think they deserved it." But again, Lewis, after finally seeing the scene in question, said, "I'm fine with that, and I have no problem with the movie." This absolutely nuts spiderweb of misunderstandings and non-conspiracies was eventually parodied by Lewis himself in a 2013 Funny or Die sketch with Weird Al.
2005, Lionsgate released this, the uncut version. I think it's an undisputed masterpiece.
But of course, this wasn't the first time Huey Lewis and the News would have a problem with a movie's soundtrack. But before we get to that, let's back up 1 second and talk about that album of theirs that Bateman lovingly reviews in American Psycho, Sports. After forming in 1979, Sports would be the News's first mainstream success in 1984. And even then, it was a slow burn. It debuted at number 6, but because of the band's heavy touring and favorable MTV play, it eventually reached number 1, with 4 10-top singles: Heart of Rock and Roll, Heart and Soul, If This Is It, and I Want a New Drug. And that last song is the one that got the honor of the Weird Al treatment, in the form of I Want a New Duck.
I want a new duck. Woman won't try to bite.
It's not one of his better parodies. However, aside from Patrick Bateman, there was one other notable and influential person who was a big fan of the album Sports, Ivan Reitman. There's a ton of great behind-the-scenes stories about the making of Ghostbusters, from the bizarre and unfilmable original script by Dan Aykroyd to the drama surrounding the name of the film being shared with an old TV show. But for our story, we're coming in after filming has already started. Director and producer Ivan Reitman, Canadian-born veteran of top-tier comedies like Animal House and Stripes, is trying to find a sound that will work for the Ghostbusters jingle, which at this point in the production is just a part of the in-world commercial in the movie.
We're ready to believe you.
Well, Sports had just come out prior to filming, and Reitman was a fan. So much so that he was already editing footage of Ghostbusters to the track on the album, I Want a New Drug. He thought that the casual blues rock sound would complement the movie, and in particular be great for this jingle. The problem was, lyrically, New Drug didn't fit with the movie, so Reitman asked Lewis and the News to work with him on Ghostbusters for the sound he was looking for. But it was at this time that the News were very busy touring and promoting their first big hit album with Sports, and they didn't want to stall their momentum by stopping to work on what was a yet unheard of movie. "We were enjoying ourselves," Lewis said, so we politely declined. You know, if Lewis learns anything after all this, I hope it was that sometimes you have to not so politely decline things. Otherwise, you leave the door open to having people just walk all over you in this industry. This left Reitman scrambling to find someone who could match the type of sound he was loving in New Drug. Long Island singers, the Alessi brothers, actually received a tape of Ecto-1 driving around to I Want a New Drug with the instructions to match the vibe. And while they couldn't quite get something that worked for the jingle, they did land a spot on the final soundtrack with Savin' the Day. Actually, a lot of the Ghostbusters soundtrack is made of these runner-ups who couldn't get the title track to sound the way Reitman wanted. Musician duo Glenn Hughes and Pat Thrall came in second place, nearly nabbing the gold as Reitman liked their rendition so much he actually began cutting footage to their track in place of New Drug. However, Bill Murray, of all people, one day decided he didn't like their version and nixed the Hughes Thrall track over a lunch meeting. Thanks, Bill. By now, principal photography had finished, and Reitman was still missing his New Drug sound-alike jingle, which had now been elevated in importance to main title track. So this was getting to be a serious crunch. And now it's here that a Columbia Pictures employee mentions the musician she is currently dating as a good choice, Ray Parker Jr.
I'm in love with the other woman.
In the 70s and 80s, Ray Parker Jr., session guitarist turned solo performer, could be mentioned in the same breath as Michael Jackson, Prince, and Rick James. He once boasted of making $1,000 a day, 6 days a week, in 1980s money. In order to secure him for Ghostbusters, Parker was offered a good chunk of money he could keep regardless if Reitman liked or used the song, with his only directives being it had to have a saxophone in it just like I Want a New Drug, and he had to turn a preview of the song around in 48 hours. And Parker took that challenge and ended up creating one of the biggest and certainly most recognizable movie soundtrack hits until basically Will Smith came along 14 years later to try and challenge him with Men in Black. Reitman loved what Parker came up with and asked him to turn around a full version plus a music video almost immediately. So he must have hit that exact I Want a New Drug feel Reitman had been looking for the entire time. Now, you might have realized that I actually haven't played the song for you yet. And part of that is because YouTube flags music so heavily, no matter how fair use something is, and I'd like to monetize one of these eventually. But now, let's give a listen to I Want a New Drug. Now, wait a second. If you have not heard this song before, you're probably going, did he play Ghostbusters by accident? Hang on, keep listening.
I want a new drug, one that won't make me sick. If there's something strange in your neighborhood.
I'm watching TV and there's a promo for Ghostbusters, and I turned to my wife and I said, I can't believe it. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, isn't that Want a New Drug only sped up?
The first time I had heard A New Drug, I went, oh my God, does this mean that the song that I played over and over again, exhaustingly, part of the very fabric that constituted the core makeup of my 80s childhood, that song basically owes its birth to the same thing as...
Let's kick it. All right, stop.
In 1990, Vanilla Ice released his hit single, Ice Ice Baby, featuring heavy sampling from Queen and David Bowie's Under Pressure. Although at first, Ice would deny that this was a direct sample,
Ding 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 diggy ding ding. Ding ding ding. That's the way theirs goes. Ours goes ding 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 diggy ding ding. Ding 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 diggy ding ding.
he would eventually settle out of court for a reported $4 million. Now, Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters doesn't sample I Want a New Drug, and obviously there is a gulf of a gap between the quality of Ice Ice Baby and Ghostbusters, and that's owing to the undeniable and immense skill of Ray Parker Jr. I mean, the guy was being hired at 14 years old. Even if he did copy the underscore or riff of I Want a New Drug, he added a lot more to the song. For example, Parker was the only artist to figure out the puzzle that was trying to fit the name Ghostbusters into the actual song. It's not exactly rhymable. But Parker figured out that if he didn't actually have to say the word, he could get around the problem. Hence the call and response.
Who you gonna call?
So in the end, he had his girlfriend bring in her high school friends to shout the word on the record. Hang on something. I need to double check something in my research. I'm sorry to stop the video for 1 second, but what's girlfriend? The girlfriend that worked at Columbia Pictures? No, it was a different girlfriend. Ooh, okay. Well, that's not great, but you know, he was a famous musician in the 80s. I'm sure it happened all the time.
Now I hate to have to cheat, but it feels better when I sneak.
Yeah. But What high school friends? Like friends of hers that she went to high school with in the past? Wait a second. They were all teenagers? Uh-oh.
I'm just an average guy. Fool around a little on the side.
All right. Before we get too accusatory here,
Right, it just sounds like Peter.
No, it doesn't.
Does a bit.
the other girlfriend was 17 years old. More of a Jerry Seinfeld situation here. Hey, what is it with dating a 17-year-old? You pick her up from high school, bring her courtside to the Knicks game next to Alec Baldwin, and all she can talk about is her homework. At least P. Diddy seemed to like her a lot. Anyway, yes, the voices you hear shouting Ghostbusters on the famous track are high school girls, one of whom Ray Parker Jr. was dating, presumably behind the back of his girlfriend at Columbia Pictures, who got him the job in the first place. Ooh. So my nostalgia for the song has certainly taken a bit of a hit at this point, and Huey Lewis and his publisher were also not exactly happy about the situation either. In 2001, Lewis said,
The offensive part was not so much that Ray Parker Jr. had ripped this song off. It was kind of symbolic of an industry that wants something. They wanted our wave and they wanted to buy it. We were adamant about, look, it's not for sale. In the end, I suppose they were right. I suppose it was for sale because basically they bought it.
Lewis and his publishing company ended up settling a lawsuit out of court for reported $5 million. Parker didn't do any favors by mentioning all the other songs that also sounded similar to Ghostbusters, including the similar riff in the song Pop Music, and even the call and answer in Soulfinger. Many of you have probably heard of this lawsuit and the controversy surrounding the two songs before. This is not new information.
Ray Parker Sr. was at a Huey Lewis concert, and he pulled out a phone and he said, Ray Parker Jr., you know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this.
But what I hadn't realized, which James Green Jr. documented in his book, was how Ivan Reitman and Columbia Pictures were specifically requesting their musicians to copy the Huey Lewis sound. Remember him passing around the clips of it edited into the Ecto-1? And Ray Parker Jr. just did it the most literally. In fact, runner-ups Hugh and Thrall, when they heard what had been chosen as the marquee track, remarked, "This is basically just the music for I Want a New Drug," while the Alessi brothers were a little more blunt in saying, "Oh, you didn't tell us you just wanted to steal it." But of course, it's still a great song, and in my personal opinion, being inspired by and even incorporating that inspiration into your own work is a part of music, and all art, as long as you are properly crediting and compensating everyone, of course. What's interesting is that Ray Parker Jr. would have even more issues with his hit song, even after the resolution of the lawsuit. In 2022, Ray Parker Jr. gave an interview to Cinema Blend, in which he described what felt as a very cold shoulder from Columbia and the wider Ghostbusters franchise. It seems like after the original Ghostbusters film that they've been trying to bury the song. They don't really use the song like I thought they were going to use it. But why? Well, if you remember, by the time Ray Parker Jr. got the gig, Reitman had already finished filming and was in a crunch with having so many other bands miss the mark on the sound he was looking for. Well, that crunch worked for Parker's advantage greatly, as he was able to negotiate a sweet deal where he would retain the majority of the controlling rights of his song, meaning he would be able to make the most money from it. Making more money than the studio is a big no-no in Hollywood. Hell, even making a decent amount of money compared to the studio is discouraged. For example, did you know that hugely successful movies like Forrest Gump, Men in Black, hell, even Lord of the Rings, on paper, thanks to what's known as Hollywood accounting, they've actually never made a net profit, The net profit is all the money that's left over after all expenses are added in. And often, studios will add a whole bunch of sometimes random debt to a movie's book in order to make it go into the red. This is specifically done to keep people lower on the ladder, like writers, composers, musicians, and sometimes editors who have net profit deals from sharing any of that bonus money if the movie is successful. This is opposed to gross profits, the actual revenue of a movie within a certain time frame, which actors, directors, and producers usually get in their deals. Actually, another little side story from the book was Filmation, the company that owned the Ghostbusters name from the old TV show. They got a lump sum and net profits of about 1% of the Ghostbusters movie, should it be successful, as part of the deal to license that name. I highly doubt they saw a dime of that net profit. But Ray Parker Jr. basically got to bypass all of that by keeping the largest controlling stake in the song, which Columbia was so mad about afterwards that they actually tried to get Parker to give some of the profits from the song back. Also rubbing a little salt in the wound was the fact that while the movie and song were both huge hits, the song got more awards recognition than anyone in the movie. I got nominated for an Oscar and the movie didn't. I won a BAFTA and the movie didn't. I don't know where the resentment from the... Wait, hang on. What the f*** is happening in this Oscars performance? Jesus.
Yes, we're back.
So, by the time the sequel got rolling around, Parker, who'd assumed he'd be getting calls for life from Reitman and company, ended up not hearing a damn thing. I made too much money, he said. In the sequel, Run DMC got tapped to do a new version of the song. And I'm actually going to say something blasphemous here, but it's actually my personal favorite version out of all of them. While Parker's track evoked the new blues R&B feel of Huey Lewis in the 80s, Run DMC's version is a nice nod to the iconic theme while being a completely new entity. It's very fun and reflects the growing influence of hip-hop hitting the mainstream of the late 80s, early 90s. Plus, the bridge slaps so hard. Oh, God, I love that. Subsequent versions wouldn't stray too far from Parker's original, though, usually just swapping out guitar and vocal stylings while keeping the same riff and melody, like the Extreme Ghostbusters version performed by voice actor Jim Cummings. Then, of course, we have the version that accompanied the 2016 movie Answer the Call.
Let's go. Let's go. Oh, did you want to? Sorry, I'll let you.
With this movie, I'm in the boat of people that were really excited for it and wanted it to do well, especially in response to the blatant misogyny directed towards the cast and crew.
I mean, 4 female Ghostbusters? The feminists are taking over. I'm an adult virgin.
Only to end up watching the movie and go, it's fine, I guess. It's okay. But that does not extend to Fall Out Boy's take on the song, I'm Not Afraid. It's pretty awful, bland and nothing new, plus its stylings are a decade behind the movie's release. A toothless punk rock sound missing the charm of the band's catalog from its early 2000 hits. Not even Missy Elliott can save it in the middle. Missy should have just done the whole thing. I mean, sure, her peak was just as far away from the movie as Fall Out Boy's was, but at least using her would have been more, on theme. Like, she has this whole section in Under Construction where she talks about how she just wants female performers to just be able to do the same thing that, Prince does on stage.
We always had to deal with the guys, talking about how they gonna wear us out on records. So I had to do records that was strictly representing for my ladies.
Give her the whole song. Actually, for some reason, this movie has 3 different takes on the theme song, like they had trouble picking a direction to go in. There's a Walk the Moon rendition, which is mostly fine, although more of a straight-up cover. Then there's a Pentatonix a cappella version, if you're into that. I'm not. However, the original song Ghoster by Wolf Alice is great on that soundtrack. Of course, because the original song was such a huge hit, it would prove nearly impossible to shut out Ray Parker Jr. completely. His version does end up in the sequel, a couple of times in fact, at the birthday party scene, essentially canonizing the song within the Ghostbusters universe, and briefly at the beginning and end of the movie. Interestingly, he's left off of the movie's soundtrack though. I couldn't find any details about what kind of deal Parker may have gotten for these inclusions, but I'm going to guess that he was most likely paid just a flat fee, and that's because this is the deal he had for the song's inclusion in the 2009 video game. Parker was paid around $70 or $80K flat for about the first 15 seconds. So I'm going to guess he got a nice chunk of change for Ghostbusters 2 after all. The original song is also featured at the beginning of the mega hit in its own right cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, although it is a modified version. Interestingly, Ray Parker Jr. played guitar on some of the show's music that was composed by teen group Tahiti, but the credits list John Smith as the singer of the theme. My research pointed to that being a pseudonym for actor Carl Anderson. My best guess is that there must have been some type of rights sharing issue between the movie and the show, in the same type of manner in which all the characters of the show were made to look different than their movie counterparts. You know what I mean? So where does this story end up today?
A replica of what?
A ghost trap?
Well, Afterlife and Frozen Empire gave up altogether on giving their own unique takes on the song.
All dark and horny at 12 o'clock.
And they barely included Ray Parker Jr.'s original either, confirming the studio cold shoulder. Yeah. Instead, we get McKenna Grace's Haunted House, which I'm not really a fan of. I'm sorry. Ray Parker Jr. was obviously never able to top the smash success that was Ghostbusters, but unfortunately his solo albums afterward weren't even well received. It really seems like he took a nosedive with his 1987 album After Dark, being called depressing and too generic and bland to matter. Yikes. Nowadays, you don't even think of him outside of Ghostbusters at all.
I'm Ray Parker Jr., writer and performer of the Academy Award nominated hit single Ghostbusters.
When at his prime, he stood shoulder to shoulder with 80s heavyweights.
I ain't afraid to no Stroy.
And in regards to Ghostbusters borrowing from Huey Lewis and his teenage side piece, well, there's certainly, worse people out there for sure. But I'd be lying if I said that hadn't affected my overall view of the man. Especially when you find out he never even credited those teens for their work. I mean, they call out that name no less than 20 times on that track for something close to a fifth of the runtime. And no credits, and I believe no money they ever got, so. He also tried to sue Huey Lewis in 2001 after Lewis mentioned the original lawsuit over New Drug on VH1's Behind the Music, but it was thrown out almost immediately since Lewis didn't actually give any, details or anything.
Try parodying one of my songs now, you stupid bastard.
Actually, Huey Lewis is probably the one in the story that comes off looking the best. He seems like a cool guy. I mean, sure, he sued for a big payday, but his ire always seemed to be directed at the studio and publishing systems rather than people like Ray Parker Jr. He also doesn't seem to mind at all that he and his music are now mostly remembered because of these movie associations. But of course, if his publishing company gets wind of how much of his music I tried to squeeze into this video, I'm sure I'm gonna get copyright clocked.